Our Greek trip started in Athens as a girls' trip that I would be part of for about 2 days. We started out with a tour of the historic aspects of the city and the Acropolis. In the first part of our tour, we saw the changing of the guards at the Athens Parliament. After the changing of the guards, we walked through a garden of beautiful jacaranda trees outside of Zappeion in Athens. Zappeion is used for meetings and ceremonies that are both official and private. Soon we were on our way to Athens' Acropolis. Every city in Greece has their own Acropolis. An Acropolis is a central, defensively oriented district in ancient Greek cities. From the Acropolis, we took in amazing views and explored the Parthenon, the Temple of Athena Nike, the Erechtheion, and the Propylaea. Please excuse my pronunciation. This theater here is still active for concerts. When booking a tour to the Athens Acropolis, make sure you book the one with Acropolis tickets included, or else you may have to pony up more cash. Also, don't touch the columns or you will get yelled at. Some of the columns are refurbished or rebuilt. A certain percentage of restored ruins must be original material. The Parthenon is the most famous building in the Acropolis and was meant to be the chief shrine to Athena and also the treasury of the Delian League, a confederacy of ancient Greek states under the leadership of Athens, founded in 478 BCE. According to some sources, Pericles misappropriated surplus funds from the League to pay for new buildings. This is an example of what a Greek church might look like. As you can see, it is very ornate inside with frescoes all over the walls. On our second day, we did a food tour through Athens with stops at the local fish market and for Greek coffee. Greek coffee is put into sand until it bubbles, and then it is poured in a very particular way. You are not supposed to drink the grounds of the coffee and can use them to tell your fortune afterwards. I'm spelling mine.
Very nice job. Do you see? Okay, this is how your coffee should look like.
Leave the grounds inside, yeah?
It's called if the technology is there, coffee.
This is another church with more frescoes. After 2 days, the girls kicked me out of their girls' trip. This is the Corinth Canal, and it is the deepest canal in the world. Next, I was off through the Greek countryside in my tour bus. Along the way, we stopped at the Theatre of Epidaurus, the best preserved ancient theater in Greece, designed for perfect acoustics. So much so that you can hear a pin drop. I continued my quest through a lovely little portside town with a castle in the middle of the water and a castle on a hill. Next, we arrived at the tomb of Agamemnon in Mycenae. It is unknown who the tomb was built for, but the amount of labor involved led many to believe that it is built for the ruler of Mycenae. There were also other ruins to explore. As we continued our drive through the Greek countryside, we came across many abandoned buildings and construction projects. Finally, we arrived in Olympia, home of the Olympics. Olympia is still an active archaeological site, and yes, I saw both the Hall of Fame and the Hall of Shame. I saw all of the sites in Olympia, including the Temple of Zeus and the training areas, as well as the bathing areas. This is the original Olympic Stadium. Viewers came under that arch and sat on the grass. Back in the day, Olympians would protect themselves from the sun by covering themselves in olive oil and mud. They would then use these sharp implements to scrape off all of the mud. These are some of the surviving decorations from the ornate Olympian temples. After a few hours of exploring Olympia, we were moving on from the land of Kalamata olives to the land of green Amphissa olives in Delphi. Along the way, we crossed the Rion and Tyrion Bridge, the longest fully suspended bridge in the world. It crossed the Gulf of Corinth near Patras. The next day we arrived at the home of the Oracle of Delphi, home of the Pythian Games. The Pythian Games were held in honor of Apollo every 4 years and 2 years after the Olympic Games. A few of the buildings at Delphi include the Temple of Apollo, treasuries, the theater, the gymnasium, and the stadium. These are some of the statues that have been recovered from the archaeological site at Delphi. Notice the Egyptian likeness. Some more decorations from the facades of ornate temples. The next day we were off to see the magnificent rock structures of the monasteries at Meteora. The monasteries started with one hermit at a time climbing the rocks and living in caves inside the mountain. Eventually they built magnificent monasteries on top of the mountains. A James Bond film called For Your Eyes Only was actually shot on the most isolated monastery at Meteora. The inside of the monasteries were very peaceful and beautiful. We visited one with monks and one with nuns. All of the walls were covered in colorful frescoes. The views were also spectacular. That is the monastery used in the James Bond film For Your Eyes Only. It is inactive today because it is too hard to get to. Aren't the rock structures of Meteora magnificent? Later that day, I found myself back in gritty Athens. There was graffiti all over the place. The next day, it was time for the Greek island part of my solo trip. The girls had spent their time on the Greek island of Paros, so I booked myself a day cruise on a wooden boat to the islands of Agastri and Aegina. On Agastri, I rented a bike to the center of town, but there was not much to do there, and it was pretty run down. Aegina was a little bit bigger and nicer, with more to do, and it was the island of pistachios. They make everything out of pistachios, from ice cream to liquor. I had an ice cream, but it was black cherry. Overall, a bus tour is a great cheap way to see Greece. Catch ya on the fly.